Hello, I'm Simon, and welcome back to the Bookster podcast from inside the SaaS holiday rental software company Bookster, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Follow along as Bookster discuss their journey and their inner workings. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you find these conversations insightful and ultimately helpful. Now, I'm joined today, as always, by CEO and co-founder of Bookster, Mr. Robin Morris. Robin, hello again.
Hello, Simon. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Yes. Looking forward to the cold, wet winter.
I know, we've certainly changed season since our last podcast. It's now very dull and grey and a lot of leaves on the ground. So, we've also today lucky enough to be joined once again by Adam Aaron. Adam, welcome to the podcast again.
Hi Simon, hi Robin.
Adam, for those people at home who perhaps haven't heard a podcast before, and if not, why not? But if they haven't, perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself, your role in the Bookster company.
Sure. So I work at Bookster as the support lead. So generally I will be answering support tickets all day. Uh, I also work on things like documentation and that sort of stuff.
Okay, great. How long have you been with the company, Adam?
Good question. It's going on 11 years, I think. It could be more.
11 years. You you must have started as
Feels
a very young man.
I have stopped counting. Oh, thank you. I've stopped counting after 10, so
All right,
it's been a while.
great. Well, look, it's great to have you back on the
It's going
podcast.
well.
Good. Well, no, like I say, it's good to have you back again. You have been on a previous episode or two, so if anyone would like to go back and listen after this to previous episodes, you're very welcome to try and do that. Today, though, we thought we would talk about a topic that is sort of a key to what Bookster does and how Bookster does things, and that is the topic of vertical integration. Now, Robin, perhaps you would like to sort of explain to me and our listeners what vertical integration is.
Well, the thing that we mean by vertical integration, which is not necessarily what everyone means by it, but what we mean by it is that we try to allow our clients to do everything that they need to do to run their business inside Bookster. So, once they've logged into Bookster, they shouldn't, as our aim is that they don't have to log in elsewhere. Now, the very obvious part of Bookster where that applies is OTAs, so connecting up to channels. So for people who don't know, whatever, Bookster basically is a bit of software for holiday rental providers. So you get lots of agencies or property owners, they use Bookster to run their business. So one of the parts of it is it connects up to Booking.com, Airbnb, Vrbo, and some other OTA providers, online travel agencies. Now, the general idea, the general gist, is that when they're running their business, when they're talking to guests, when they're setting their prices, when they're adding bookings or getting bookings, they don't need to log into Booking.com. They don't need to log into Airbnb. They don't need to log into all these different places. So everything is sort of integrated inside Bookster. But that actually applies to lots of other areas and as a general rule of what we are trying to do. So it does apply in other parts of the system as well. And it's something that hovers over our thoughts about when we're trying to develop the product. How can we add functionality and features, but not just that, how do we cover the bases that they need to cover without asking them to go and log into some other system? And that's the basis of it.
Right. So it's sort of for the customer then, or the end user, I guess. It's sort of speeds up the process for them, does it? It makes it easier. Is that the idea?
Yeah. The idea is that, say, for example, cleaners or cleaning or change arounds. Bookster has inside the ability to see arrivals, to see departures, to mark a property as available or unavailable. Now, we haven't drilled down into being much more of a task manager or allocating tasks to cleaning companies or paying cleaners, but we have provided someone with the basis of what they would need to run their business. So we've covered that base off for them. If they really wanted to, they could go and use some other bit of software to run, if it made up a much bigger part of what they were doing on a daily basis. But we're trying to make sure that there is something in there that does allow them to stay inside Bookstore and complete those tasks, basically. So
Right.
That's a good example of that.
And I mean, is that something? I mean, what made you, from a sort of business point of view, want to do that, to keep everyone into Bookstore rather than have them log into other sites? Is that obviously a conscious decision from you guys to do that?
It's not really a business decision, it's more a usability decision. So it's more about making sure that they don't have a bad usability experience, that they have to go and use some other system and jump off to use other things.
Right.
Because it can be confusing, they can lose their plot and what they're doing. So it's not really directly a business decision, I suppose, as in, we're not doing it so that we can capture more revenue out of people. We're doing it really so that they get the most out of Bookstore, really. So it's more of a way that we approach what we're doing, how we're developing the platform.
Right. And so, Adam, how does this sort of affect your role in Bookstore in terms of customer experience?
In terms of customer experience, I mean, you've got to know about if we are using another system, and sort of being the gatekeeper to our end user. We have to know about the other system, whereas the end user wouldn't. So there's a certain amount of hiding the complexity from the end user, or keeping things as simple as possible for them. It's not always easy to explain, because part of the whole, if you're integrating with a third party, then you don't necessarily want to shout about it to your end user, but at the same time you don't want to hide it. If you're at the end of the day, you're trying to help them run their business, and the simpler you can make that, the better. One thing I would touch upon about what Robin just mentioned, I don't know if it's called the 80-20 rule, where you're trying to solve a problem for 80% of your audience. 20%, it's not going to perfectly solve it. 80%, like, it's going to do more than solve it. And I think maybe from a business point of view, that could be where we're coming from as far as business decisions. Nobody is going to get everything 100% for 100% of the people. It's not possible, because people are different and have different needs. But if we can identify our audience and solve a problem in a way that makes their lives much simpler as a result of what we've done, maybe it won't be for everyone, but if we can do it for most of them, that's still successful, I think.
That's interesting. I mean, what if, and obviously just coming from not knowing anything about this, because you vertically, I guess, integrate all these different providers and stuff, are you making a customer use one of these third parties that you've sort of chosen for this?
It's not always third parties. I mean, vertical integration, I suppose, it could be third parties, but it could be a decision of, do we develop something ourselves? I mean,
right.
Sometimes that's the better option.
Yeah,
Often that's the better option. I mean, you have control. It's easier to, you're not relying on somebody else's business to make decisions that affect your business. So
yeah,
so if we can develop functionality without having to integrate, I mean, from a user's point of view, it shouldn't really make a difference, but it does. If you
Right.
know, if you're relying on, you're translating someone else's decisions into how your software works, it's, from a support perspective anyway, it's much easier when you're in full control. It's much easier to rectify any issues. You're not playing a game of like, going through loads of different channels to get to speak to the right person who's a decision maker somewhere down the line.
Sure.
It's much quicker if you're developing the functionality yourself in that way. It's not always possible. It's a question of resources, etc.
yeah. But from a guest, not from a guest perspective, from a Bookster user's perspective, our goal is that
It should just work.
mainly they don't know or don't care where,
Yeah, yeah.
and so a few examples of that. So we have instant websites. So you can come along to Bookster, you can create a website from your property content, stick it on your own domain, away you go. Pretty much create a website in 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something. Now that is all us. That's 100% Bookster. We wrote all of it, basically. But we also support dynamic pricing. So you can go into Bookster, you can say, I want to price my property using dynamic pricing, which essentially means some system somewhere is setting the prices for you based on something that you don't really understand. Now, we use a third party to give us those prices. And, we're transparent about that inside Bookster. There are links, whatever, that say who this is. But from a Bookster user's perspective, they shouldn't really care. They don't pay anything to that third party. They pay us directly. They select, this is how I want to apply my pricing. They just decide to choose dynamic pricing, and that's it. In the same way that they've used the website or created a website. It just so happens that we've done all of the stuff for the website, but for dynamic pricing, we are pulling something in from someone else. Now, as Adam says, in terms of support, it's probably easier to answer some esoteric questions about the websites because we know everything about them. But if someone asks, how do you generate these prices? The only honest answer is this third party company.
It's somebody else's
that does
source.
it.
Right. Yeah.
So we don't know, really. It's a black box to us. You ask them if you want. But from fundamentally, I think, and I think, Adam was talking about this 80-20 thing. I think 80% of the people that are using a platform, or 80% of people that are likely to use Bookster, couldn't care. Like, they don't care where the prices come from, as long as they're kind of giving them something useful that they can use.
As long as it's working.
Now, 20% will care, or some small percentage will care. They'll be like, "Oh, I want to."
I want to use X provider instead of Y, and you can't solve that problem for them because we use Y, not X, and that's kind of just reality. And for those people, ultimately, you can only do so much. They've got to make a decision. Is it worth like holding on to this thing that they feel is important to them? That's probably not. In certainly 80% of the people's cases, it's not. So if they do fall into this sort of group of people that want control over everything, and I don't know, I'd say you get 80% of those people that eventually figure out, 80% of the 20 that eventually figure out, actually, it's a lot of hard work and I'm not actually gaining much.
Mm.
And then suddenly they're joining the majority again.
Right.
And it's like, okay, the Bookster has made a decision for me, but that's okay because they've done all that hard work, and essentially that's a service you are providing. You're doing the hard work so that they don't have to.
And in terms of hard work, I mean, I guess the question is because because of the way you produce things, is vertical integration, I guess, in terms of how you're describing it, causing you more work as a company, or is it easier, harder? I mean,
from a
does it even
support
affect it?
perspective, I would say it's harder if it's a third party you're integrating with. If it's a something you've created yourself, probably not. It's not causing any extra work, and that. So if anything, it's easier.
Yeah.
I suppose
Yeah.
one way of looking at it is we're trying to give people the tools to make the choices that are most consequential to their business, but automate most of the other stuff without them having to make a choice. Now, that's tricky because it means that we have an opinion, but we do have an opinion. Another example of that is around emails and booking emails. Now, we have very specific booking emails. They're very simple. They have a link, and then you link back into our guest area where they get, if you're a guest, you're getting these simple Bookster emails. Now, lots of other providers will give their clients the ability to create really random, elaborate emails.
Enough rope to hang
which gives them
themselves.
enough rope, and they spend a lot of time thinking about the emails that go out backwards and forwards. Now, we do have email marketing built into Bookster because we think that is where you should spend time, and that is where you should be maybe thinking about how you present your brand and whatever. But when you're actually communicating with the guest in terms of the booking, it needs to be very simple, very easy for the guest to understand, easy for the guest just to go in, make a payment, understand how to access the property, etc. And so we've sort of tied all that down and made a choice for them, and we're opinionated about it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of sits a little bit in the vertical integration, but it's also saying these choices that you make about what you send to your guest in the booking process, we don't think will make much difference to your business in terms of getting more of your guests or making the guests happy or sad or whatever. But maybe the ones that email choices that you make when you're marketing to people before they've booked or after they've left, you should probably spend more time thinking about those, and where more flowery emails are more valuable. But yes, we've made that choice for people, but it's hopefully freeing them up to do other things.
I mean, I guess, from a client's point of view, that's why they're coming to you, though, isn't it? I mean, they want things to be easy, and they want things to be, I guess, like you say, the 80% of them anyway just want it to work, I guess. And they don't care. I mean, the decisions behind the scenes really doesn't, they're not that worried about that, I guess. It's just what happens to them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and you have to sort of buy into that a bit for Bookster to be the right thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily a bad thing having an opinion or even shouting about having an opinion. If your opinion doesn't agree with going back to the 20%, there's other software out there that will probably work better for them, and that's fine. There's a market for different types of software, to do similar things, but in a different way. If you work a certain way and Bookster also works that way, then you're going to be a really good fit. Not everyone is a good fit, and that is a reality that is okay once you accept it. If you can't accept it, then you're going to be constantly up against that.
Yeah.
From a user's point of view and a company's point of view, I would say.
Which is probably what leads other companies to constantly look to do one of two things. They either implement features based on one or two clients' demands, or they implement integrations with third parties to try and fulfill those clients, maybe very small number of clients' demands. And as a result, they make it difficult for the user to use the system. But not always. Some people could do a really great job of that, so that's fine as well. But by having lots of different things all joined together, you are increasing the chances of something going wrong. So, and as Adam points out, it's more difficult to support because people will ask, people don't know the boundary between one bit of software and another necessarily. They'll ask you, if you integrate with some other third party, even if you've never logged into it, you don't know what it is, your clients are going to ask you questions about it.
Yeah.
So it's better if you can answer them inside Bookster and understand. Do it.
Yeah, and you're going to, and I guess that leads on to so what we've touched on, I suppose. But any problems that the client has, you guys are probably able to fix these things a lot quicker than because of the way you do it within Bookster, rather than having to, like you say, go to a call center somewhere else in another company first. So you can provide a better service, I'm guessing.
Indeed.
Which is all good. Right. Unless I think you've got anything else to add about vertical integration, we're probably about up to our time. So I think at this point we'll sort of wrap up. Interesting conversation.
20% more to say.
You've got trouble is 80% don't want to hear it. So, right. What I will say is that we do have a sister podcast, obviously, which is Smashing Your Holiday Rental Goals, and people can go and find that on the internet. If you'd like to leave a review for that podcast, or indeed this podcast, that'd be great as well. And if you have any questions that you'd like answered in future podcasts, please email them in to podcast@booksterhq.com. That's podcast@booksterhq.com, and we'll get to them in a future podcast. For now, though, gents, thank you much for your time. Adam, nice to see you again on the podcast, so thank you for coming. Robin, we shall chat again very soon, and until then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you.